Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another session here with the Georgia Department of Education Community for Music Technology. We are continuing our discussion of what it means to be an audio engineer. And last time we talked about gain and why gain is important and how we go about getting a good recorded line level audio track into our digital audio workstation. Remember, we're using Logic this time. All of these same ideas apply in Soundtrap, Cubase, Reason, Ableton, Pro Tools, any of that. You're all able to transfer these same concepts right into what you're doing, but we want to make sure that we do understand them on a fundamental level in order to help them make sense. So we are going to go back to looking at our Logic DAW and give you just a reminder of where we left off in this project, and it sounds like this. One fish, two fish, red fish, blue fish. And as I said, there are a bunch of ways that you can turn sound clips to be louder in Logic. One of them is simply to raise the volume slider all the way up, and then we get something like this. One fish, two fish, red fish, blue fish. Now, I will say, from an audio engineering standpoint, looking at my master fader over here right now, before getting into the mastering process, I am too loud on this track. I have eliminated all of my headroom possibility and left myself at negative 0.9 dBs. So what I would do at this point is actually hold shift, click in, and reduce the volumes on all of my tracks. So I get something that's more like this. One fish, two fish, red fish, blue fish. Now I'm at -5. Still maybe a tad bit on the loud side for what we're going to do, though we would probably tame this a bit more with compression and other audio choices, but we should actually be a bit more balanced now in the approach. One fish, two fish, red fish, blue fish. Okay, so we're somewhere between -8 and -6. I would probably like to be between -10 and -8, peaking on my stereo output, meaning my overall combined sound is what I'm watching here on this track, and that would be hopefully peaking between -10 and -8 to give us room to work with compressors and stuff later. We're going to talk about compressors at a different point, but my audio is now in place. Now, if I had already maxed out that volume bar and still needed a little bit of more, one thing that I could add is just a basic gain utility. So if I add this plugin called my gain option, and I just listen to the audio alone, I can increase one fish, two fish, red fish, blue fish. I can increase the level of that sound right there using the gain structure. So I'm just going to go ahead and leave it at like 2 dBs just to give ourselves a little bit more audio. Or if I didn't do that, I could come down here to this function and normalize the region gain. And this will tell you where it wants to set its peak function at. So I'm going to set the peak function at -8 dBs. And when I set it at -8 dBs and apply that, now you'll notice the waveforms jumped up big time. It's the same thing, it's just louder. So now the peak is at -8 dBs. One fish, two fish, red fish, blue fish. So if you have the opportunity in your DAW to normalize what you are doing, you can achieve that type of gain enhancement. Now, a lot of people like to go in and actually set all of their tracks to be the same normalized gain level to begin with, so that they're at the same volume to start with, which is really kind of cool. Now, why is that significant? Well, because we want to apply this new thing called the Equalizer. Dun, dun, dun. Sounds like a great superhero name, right? The Equalizer. Well, no. So what is the Equalizer? I'm going to open the Equalizer on my audio channel, and it looks like this. And with the analyzer turned on, as I play my audio, it's going to show me 1 fish, 2 fish, red fish, blue fish. Some important things. And as I pause it right here, you begin to see these little spikes along the path here. Now, what is this path? Well, this is a spectrum from 20 vibrations to 20,000 vibrations. That's our human audio range spectrum. And that tells us the lowest frequency sounds down here and the highest frequency sounds. Now, why is a Stradivarius violin better than a Strad knockoff that you can find on Amazon? Well, one, the construction factor is a lot better, but two, the wood that was specifically used in the Stradivarius and the way the body was designed and all of those things added to specific harmonics in the tone quality of that instrument being highlighted in specific ways. Now, I'm not saying you can recreate the sound of a Strad perfectly using an equalizer, but you can certainly get closer by finding ways to manipulate the frequencies of what you hear in the sound. So each one of these dots has a little bit different shape, and you can control that shape to highlight or reduce or I should say boost or attenuate specific frequencies. Attenuating means to reduce specific frequencies in that sound. So, for instance, if I wanted to add more low end to my vocal, I could take this orange dot and create what is known as a shelf. So it creates a little ramp that levels out on a shelf. 1 fish, 2 fish, red fish, blue fish. And hopefully you were able to hear that there's much more bass resonance in my voice as I get to that point, as opposed to taking it away. 1 fish, 2 fish, red fish, blue fish. And you notice all that noise down there went away. Well, my voice doesn't occur down in the 60 hertz range. I'm not with the Oak Ridge Boys doing the Papa Mau Maus, but I got rid of that because that was noise I didn't need. You could also use what is called a filter, and this shape is your filter shape. So I actually had to drag that filter shape in on that one specifically that time. But now I've got a filter that's literally just removed all of that information that's below this red line. It's just gone now. 1 fish, 2 fish, red fish, blue fish. It's pretty useful. This would be specifically a high pass filter because the sounds that are above, the higher sounds above the filter, are allowed to pass through the sound. Now, from there, I can find places that I want my sound to be increased or boosted. 1 fish, 2 fish, red fish, blue fish. Or attenuated. 1 fish, 2 fish, red fish, blue fish. So I could find things like that. I can make the top end of my voice a little more airy. 1 fish, 2 fish, red fish, blue fish. Maybe there's part of my voice up there that I don't want. 1 fish, 2 fish, red fish, blue fish. 1 fish, 2 fish, red fish, blue fish. So there's all sorts of different things that by making subtle adjustments, none of these adjustments are more than 3 or 4 decibels in strength. You can see down here, the information that you're looking at is what frequency you have targeted, how much you have increased the volume, so 4.3 decibels of increase, and the number at the bottom is the Q factor, or how wide the parabola is that you're affecting things. So if I go to a 0.1, that's a very wide, and you're affecting like 4 octaves of sound then, as opposed to a 100, which is almost just that targeted one frequency. So you can create different effects here by changing widths. 1 fish, 2 fish, red fish, blue fish. 1 fish, 2 fish, red fish, blue fish. So there's a version of my audio that has equalization applied to it. There are all sorts of different presets, by the way, if you want to check out different presets. For instance, if you wanted to make it sound like a pop vocal, this would be the place to start for a pop vocal. 1 fish, 2 fish, which is kind of where we already were. Or, hey, if you wanted to make it sound like you were on a telephone, you could do different things. 1 fish, 2 fish, red fish, blue fish. 1 fish, 2 fish, red fish, blue fish. And that would help you get to that telephone kind of sound that's available to you. So all sorts of different things that you can do there with the EQ. I'm actually going to go back for now just to the pop vocal because that was pretty close to what we already had. Might back that filter down for my voice just a little bit. Okay, so how could that be then applied to other things? Well, let's look at this Atlanta drum just a second. And we recorded all this together, but this kick drum is what I'm most interested in. So I'm like, man, I really want that to be bassier. Well, I can get in and now the thing is, you got to watch and make sure you're not going over on your volumes down here, because there are things that you can do then to throw that way over, but I can pull my kick drum down. Get rid of those high pitch frequencies if you want to. Just get the thud of that bass. One fish, 2 fish, red fish, blue fish. 1 fish, 2 fish. So you've got a different sounding kick drum then. And there are all sorts of different kicks that you could target there. Maybe you wanted to go into the drums category and do a modern kick. That's a very different sounding effect. Red fish, blue fish. One fish, 2 fish, red fish, blue fish. So, you got to decide how you want sounds to actually come across. Let's look at this classic electric piano right quick. This is getting a bit extreme with how this works, but nonetheless, all we're doing is highlighting or removing specific frequencies. And when we put that all back together, one fish, two fish, red fish, blue fish. Now, other than just creating tone, which is an incredibly important expressive choice that you have now given to your students, how do you exactly want the tone of this instrument to sound? Super expressive. How else can you use that? Well, if you know your vocal range falls in a specific spot, then you might go into some of your other instruments and dip out that spot so that without having to reduce the volume of your instruments, you're creating a place in the mix for your voice or a lead guitar solo or a violin solo or whatever. As Beethoven wrote a violin concerto, he would have scored the other instruments in the orchestra away from the octave that the violin was in to allow the violin to cut while it was on stage and be heard. The same thing can be achieved here by using the EQ to remove some of that sonic material that's around your main idea melody to actually be able to control. So I say all that to say this. Don't be afraid to teach your students EQ. Do you have to know exactly how to EQ everything right off the bat? No, you don't. That's what the experimentation and the learning process is for. Now, there are some great resources out there. I'll try to leave them for you on our communities page so that you can find these things and know a good starting point, but a basic Google search of how to EQ blah, blah, blah will definitely help you discover where the target ranges for each instrument are. So check that out. Don't be afraid to get started with your equalizer, also known as the EQ. Have some fun, get in there, experiment. You're going to be able to do lots of cool things with making the sound. Thanks for watching. I hope you found that helpful.